Go to the front. Yeah. So I'm welcoming you, and I'm opening up this topic of women's frontline role in the democratic revolution. And just to begin with the topic, with the cover page, it says that we have to talk about liberating minds as well as liberating society. So this topic, as we selected to work on it, and as teacher Katie has just told you, is that we try to select the women in history. I know many people don't want to hear about history, and especially in this generation, we hear, people say, that was then and this is now, the things that applied then do not apply now. But I want to tell you, comrades, that the history of those people who started out democratic revolutions is what we are sitting on right now. The people, human rights, people in those generations, they are the ones that sat down, met, did all these things to make us right now talk about human rights. But today we are going to talk about the women. Unfortunately, we are not going to talk about the common women you know about, like, Winnie Mandela, think about the common, the popular women we know about. We are going to talk about these women who are more, because sometimes when we talk about these popular women, sometimes many people do not relate, Sometimes they don't relate to that popular person. But we are going to get these women who came from different backgrounds, educated, uneducated, and people were from different races. Yes, there are going to be some few popular women that probably you know about, but majority of these women are around the African continent, and outside the African continent. They are not really known, but they did great things, and these things should inspire us. And it's not going to only inspire you as a person, but also it's going to encourage you. And I don't want us to look at women, but also men, Don't look at women, but look at the role they played. And that is what is going to inspire you to be better than what you are right now. So that's what we are going to talk about. So now, as I said, that these women come from different backgrounds, from different educational, from different races. Many of them were exiled. Some of them were executed. They were imprisoned. You think then, and imagine that is the beginning of the 19th century. That's what we are talking about. They were imprisoned. They protested. They did all the things that we are doing today. So the foundation of what we are doing today did not start with our generation or this generation. I'm not of the youth generation. I'm the generation before you guys who are youth right now. But what these women did, and I encourage you to go read the stories. Unfortunately, I'm not going to talk about the popular women or the women. Many women have done great things in this generation, but those are not what we are talking. We want to draw inspiration from the women that were in the past, to encourage, and then also to show you that it's not you who has suffered imprisonment this time. It's not you who has been, tried to be rejected. No, it's not only you, because sometimes we say, oh, I'm not educated. How can I do that? The lands are the ones who to be the frontliners. No, you who's not educated can be a frontliner too. So this is what we're going to learn today. So can we go ahead and move the slide over? So the first women we are going to talk about, can you move on? I'm not going to go to the objective. I've kind of summarized it. So the first women that we're going to talk about, these were young women who sacrificed their lives for different causes around the world. And as you see, there is Malala, who came from Pakistan. She was 15 years old. How old are you right now? What are you doing? Josina, she was the wife of the first wife of the president of Mozambique, Machel. She was 18 years when she started in the revolution. Greta, she's from Sweden. She's 15. She's still around. The other two, the two are still around, but unfortunately, Josina passed away. But these were young women when they started working, making changes in the countries where they came from. So they sacrificed and they were resilient, they were courageous in the face of adversity. They advocated for education and women's rights, and they impacted the future of their generations in their countries and around the world. Next screen. So I'll begin by talking about Malala. Malala, she was born 1997 in Pakistan. I think you heard about this young girl. At the age of at the age of 15, she became a global symbol of resilience and fighting for girls' education. She survived the assassination by the Taliban. So she courageously spoke out against the prohibition of girl education imposed by the Taliban. The Taliban came and took over their region, and so they passed a law that all girls should not go to school. But this girl, and let me tell you, that was this girl went to Facebook and started narrating the story of her region. And then she became a target of these people. And they attempted to assassinate her. Actually, she was shot in the head, but somehow she survived. So, but even then she stood up at her age of 15 and had to say something about what was going in her region. How much more can we do so in this current generation? Malala has advocated for young women, advocated for their rights to live free from violence, learn and lead, inspiring many and influencing global discussion on women's rights and education. So in 2014, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her efforts in advocating for children's rights. She also has a fund, and that fund educates activists for 12 years and promotes free, safe, quality education for girls as UN, and she's a UN messenger of peace. So that is Malala. Can we go to the next one? Josina. So Josina, she's from Mozambique, and she was the first wife of Michel, Michel Samora, who was the first president, I think, of Mozambique, and who also fought the liberation of Mozambique from the Portuguese. So one time she says that the colonialists wants us to, the colonialists wanted to deceive us with their teaching. They taught us only the history of Portuguese. Who was Josina? Josina was born in 1945. She was a revolutionary fighter for Mozambique Liberation Front, fighting her country's independence until her timely death at the age of 25. What can I tell you about her? Josina was 18 years old when she fled from her country to go to Tanzania. Tanzania at that time was a center where all the African countries were running to because it was the only country, it was a base that allowed all these revolutionaries from whatever country they were. Like right now, people are running from and coming to the West or wherever, but this country allowed these people to come and they would go in and train. She was a soldier. So they came from all their countries and came and trained and trained to go back into their country and fight the colonialists. So at 18 years old, she escapes from her home and tries to get to Tanzania. But she was captured by the Portuguese and returned back, imprisoned. But again, she tried her level best, and again she went back to Tanzania. But one thing that stands out about her is that at some point she had a child when she returned back to Mozambique. And when she had that child, she left that child with the neighbor and went back into the battle went back for training in Tanzania. So to me, she was a young girl, 18 years. Let us remember ourselves as 18. What did we do? Even at this age where they are forcing us to do things. Okay? Just like coming to meetings, coming on platforms, participating in what we are doing. People are forcing people to come, or even we can't even say something. But look at these young kids, 18 years old, leaving your home. And by the way, she was born in a family that were nationalists. People would say that they are politicians, but she left that comfort and had to go because she had to fight for her country. Where is that spirit in us? How can that inspire us and say, even in the comfort of the countries where we are even just forced to do things, forced to attend this, forced to come to training. Look at these kids, they were teenagers. Can we go to the next one? The next slide. So Greta Thunberg, she's from Sweden. And this young girl, she's 15 years. One of the attendants in one of the meetings had to say this of her. Thunberg, and this young girl was an activist for environment. Many times we think that it's only getting rid of the dictators, but what do you see in your world where you can pick up interest and say, let me be the voice, let me be the frontliner for that cause? So this young girl, 15 years, she used to skip school and go outside the parliament and, protest. But what is so outstanding about her is at 15 years, she used to skip school. She started these school strikes for environment. How many of us are involved in even simple protest or putting up something in the computer like this, and you say you're protesting taxes, you're protesting the way people are being treated in, say, Uganda or wherever we are? Just that simple thing, we can't even do it. But this is a 15-year girl who went to the parliament and stood out because of the way the environment was being degraded. And she went outside this Swedish parliament promoting lifestyles and choices and distributing informational flyers about the environmental destruction and degradation. And this inspired thousands of young people around the world, and millions participated in these protests back then. It's not a long time ago, I think in the 1990s. And by the way, something that is not even mentioned here, this young girl had autism, but she stood up. She saw a need for it and went out there and said something. So one of these people in attendance said that Thugman shouldn't be having to make speeches about climate at all. As she was pointed out, the older generation should have started taking care of those problems decades ago. I am 41, and this was a Caroline White saying, I am 41 and my main reaction to her speech is grief, shame, and frustration. When we see when we hear about this young girl standing up and doing something, that should be a wake-up call for us even to do more. So all these young girls that I've been talking about, these are young girls who sacrificed themselves and took up a cause to bring changes to the world and to their generation, and as well, and probably not many people know about them, but they did something. So I'm asking you, what are you doing something? What are we in this legacy gonna be remembered about? And what legacy are we leaving behind? Because remember, like today you guys are youths, or we are youths. Tomorrow there is a generation coming of those kids you have been born. How will they remember us? Are they going to just remember us by the propaganda that was going around during our generation, the corruption? Are they going to just remember us about the silence we took? Is that what they are going to remember us about? So, guys, we need to learn something, and we need to be inspired, and we need to go back and read about these people so that we maybe that can inspire us. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Teacher Kerry, and she'll continue on with the next slides.
Thank you so much, Teacher Mimi. Before I get into my little guy, I wanted to touch briefly on what it means to be an activist as a child, what it takes to motivate those who are younger to take up the cause. Before I do, it needs to be said, it is not their job. The fact that we have to ask them to stand up and do something that those who came before them should have done a long time ago is a huge failure on our part. When we ask those who are younger than us, who have come after us, who we are supposed to care for and create a better world for, when we turn to them and ask them for help, we are failing. But right now, my lovely friends, we failed. So when we ask for help, when we need them, when we need that fire of youth to come and produce something that is out of our reach, we must never shame or diminish them. They are coming to help us. So if we wish to engage the youth, they must know that we failed. They must know that we know that they are more valuable to this than anything else in the world. They must know that this revolution we are fighting so that they can have a better life. They must know that this revolution that we're asking them to fight will impact them. No child, no kid, no teenager wants to fight for the ideals of an old man. Make what's important to them your top priority. Build up the things that they love. Show them that they matter and show them that those things that they love are of value. Do not be forcing your ideals on them. Show them that you and the world that you are trying to build is worth it to them. The more they see it impact their lives, the more they are willing. And the more they see other people their own age fighting, the more they will have that fire of youth in their bellies. And while this kind of went off into a little bit of the weeds, because we're supposed to be talking about women, child and youth in empowerment is one of my most favorite things to talk about. You would not believe what a little human can do until you get out of their way and let them do it. All right. Moving on. So I had picked a couple of women. Claire Lacombe is my first woman that I'd like to speak about briefly. She was a French woman who was in the US. And I'm just going to do a quick quote about her and then discuss briefly, and we will continue on. She said, as she was speaking to the legislatures of Congress during the time that she was alive, legislators, a French woman, an actress at the moment without a part. Such am I. That which should have caused me to despair fills my soul with the pursuit of joy. As I cannot come to the assistance of my country, which you have declared to be in danger, with the monetary sacrifice I desire to offer it in the devotion of my person. Born with the courage of a Roman matron and with the hatred of tyrants, I shall consider myself happy to contribute to the destruction. Perish all despots to the very last man. This woman had fire in her belly during a time when women were terribly oppressed, during a time when women were considered half of a human being. This woman came up and yelled at the tyrants. This, while I support and honor her, I do pray that we will take a little more care of our own humanity. We are valuable. Don't say things to tyrants that might cause them to hurt you, but be strong when that fight does come to you. Take up those arms. Don't try and push it. You know how valuable you are, if nothing else, to me. But when the fight comes to you, never turn away. Like we talked about the George Washington quote, all men despise war, but when it comes, they don't turn away. Well, good men despise war. There you go. All right. With that, I'm hoping that we can take this fire into these next slides that teacher Mimi has so carefully cultivated. Teacher Mimi, please.
Thank you so much, Teacher Katie. And as we dive into the next, and this is talking about these next couple of women. One of them was from Tanzania and from Uganda. Maybe especially people who are born in the 80s probably even don't know about the one from Uganda. Maybe you've heard about her from history. Bibi Titi, who's Muhammad from Tanzania. But before I dive into that, I want to go back a little bit on the young women or young people. I want to say that if you do not know, in Uganda, the people that liberated Uganda in 1986, these were called, people were called Kadogos. These were young children who were between the ages of 5 to 15. These were the children who were on the front line. And let nobody ever deceive you. You guys, we are sitting on these people, these young kids' lives, that many of them lost their lives, by the way. In order for the early years that we enjoyed the freedom, it's these kids, because millions of people were killed, and many of these were orphaned. And when these people came from Tanzania, wherever they came from, there were many kids who were just there. So these kids were armed. They became child soldiers. And many of these kids were the ones who went on the front line to start. But why I want to bring that, and it might not be in the context of women, but these were young kids who were on the front line taking on the men at that time, and we are standing on that foundation that we are standing on because they had that courage to bring the freedom that we enjoyed that short time then. So I want to encourage you again on the youth going forward, that sacrifice. Do we still have that sacrifice? Do you sacrifice? Do you see things around you and sacrifice? People who are hungry. Do you ever think about that and you say, let me be the frontliner? You just go and maybe try to, arrange people to come and let us maybe take food to Karamoja. Do we ever think about that? So that is what this is all about. But going back on track again, so these two women, Bibi Titi Muhammad, she was from Tanzania. She was married at the age of 14 to an older man. And then Auma A.K. Lakwena, who was from Uganda, she was a fishmonger. She used to sell fish. But how did she get into this spirit of revolution, or spirit of that, saying that I have to do something about the situation that was going on Uganda, and that's what we're going to talk about. So these women demonstrated unwavering commitment to justice, empowerment, and challenging oppressive systems, inspiring generations worldwide with their courage. Probably not many people might know these ladies, but if something had been done, like, for example, then in Uganda, maybe we would be speaking about something different. But let's go on next slide. So I'll start off with Bibi T. Muhammad. She was a political activist born in 1926. Ladies and gentlemen, she was born in 1926. We are in 2024. But at that time, imagine that time, I don't think there was no internet. There was probably no phones. 1926. I want you guys to just think about it. She was born 1926. She was very instrumental in the Tanzanian, in the liberation of the Tanzanians' independence. As the leader of the women's wing of Tanganyika, at that time that was the party TANU, which is Tanganyika African National Union, she was able to mobilize 5,000 women in 1 year. Let me tell you a little bit about Bibi. Bibi was born in a Muslim family. Her father did not believe in educating girls. So she was married off at the age of 14 to an older man, back in those days. And I think some even currently, when you became of age, your father goes and talks to another, big, person, a Muslim person, and, I want to marry your daughter, and they just, marry you off. So 14 years, she got married to an older man, an older woman. But unfortunately, that marriage didn't last. She did have, sorry, I'm seeing something on the chat. She did have an education up to primary four. So if you have an excuse, me, I'm not educated, me, I cannot stand on the front, it's people who are learned who have to go in the front. Yeah? You can do, this lady was able, she was not deterred by not having an education. She was not deterred because, I'm married. She had a child, by the way. She got one child, but she vowed never to allow her daughter not to get an education because she saw the importance of an education. But what I want to say about this lady is she was not deterred because of not having an education. Many, many women, many, many men in our villages cannot do anything because, that is not for us to do. It's only these people who went through university to do. You can do something with your voice, with the little you can do. She did something, she did something. She did not, because she was not educated, at least she went and said, let me go and mobilize, tell everybody about this. We need to liberate ourselves, liberate the country, for ourselves, for whatever cause it is. I need to stand up no matter whether I did not have that much of an education. So, and with that, this baby used her cultural economic networks to raise money for that party, which was the TANU, that was fighting for freedom for the modern Tanzania that we hear now. And she was also imprisoned. So we are thinking, back then, she was also imprisoned for treason, but for life, but she got a life sentence. But that was commuted by or ended by President Nyerere when he became the first president of Tanzania. So what do we learn from her? That being uneducated, and then also being uneducated cannot prevent you from doing something, cannot keep you to be silent. Let's go to the next screen.
Before we go to the next screen, let's pause for a moment of silence, and then we shall proceed. Thank you. Over to you, Dorcas, for a moment of silence.
Thank you so much, Professor. I will put up a moment of silence for now. Comrades, please mute your mics, and then we have a moment. We also remember may brothers and sisters rest in peace. Thank you so much, comrades, for observing the moment of silence. We continue to speak for these reasons. We want to be free. Uganda must be free. Thank you so much. Over to you, Professor. And of course, you can guide us in a minute as well, if for the USA. Professor, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also remember the U.S. military personnel, the fallen, the living, and may their souls rest in peace as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we continue with our lectures for those that have just joined us.
Thank you so much. And we do remember those that have gone, that have passed away in this fight against, trying to free our countries from oppressions in Uganda, in Africa, and around the world. So continuing from where we stopped and talking about this next lady, she's Alice Awuma, aka Lakwena. Of course, she came from the northern part of Uganda, and she said, well, she was a naturally spirit medium, but also she used to selfish. So she played an important role in the Ugandan history. She was born in 1956. She experienced a profound transformation in 1985, becoming a spirit medium and assuming a traditional religious role after disappearing for 40 days. So she came out and she said she had founded the Holy Spirit movement, and that is in 96. So she combined with Christianity and with the traditional Acholi beliefs. She said she channeled the spirit of a deceased army officer called Lakwena to fight the evil and bloodshed with a divine mission to take capital Kampala. Remember, at that time, the President Museveni had taken over. They had taken over with their liberators. So she, at that time, took it upon, and remember this lady was a person who sells fish somewhere, and then she took it on herself and said, you know, because of this bloodthirst, whatever thing that was going on, she was going to get up and told her people that, you know, there's an oil that you put on your body and that bullets do not, you know, go through you. And, you know, and she inspired people and they joined her and they started fighting. And so they started fighting, I think, from 1986 through November 1987, when she was ultimately, you know, defeated by the Ugandan force. But what do we learn from this lady? She took up on her, because remember, she was somebody who sells maybe somewhere in the market, but she took on a cause. And let me tell you something, if at that time, imagine if at that time people had listened to her, I don't think we would be speaking the same things we are speaking right now. Maybe we would be in a more free Uganda. But if people had talking about right now, people probably at that time, people like when now, you know, they are talking Holy Spirit, they are thinking that this is just somebody, you know, delusional, you know, Holy Spirit movement, talking at that time about that. So I want to also go back and tell you that there are many people who are standing, seeing things wrong right now. We see things wrong, but we just keep silent. We don't do anything about it. Or at least, or maybe sometimes there are certain things, and I'm not going to just say only in Uganda, but in Africa generally, because Africa now is becoming a bleeding place for most dictators. But we see wrong things happening and we just look. So I was looking at this video on Facebook, and these are people who they see somebody who comes and kicks someone, and people just look on like this. Somebody has just kicked and that person walks away. We just look on. When the wrong things are happening, we just are silent. We are in the comforts of our own houses here in the West or wherever we are, but we are not doing anything about it. If somebody had done something about this person whom they called delusion at that time, guys, go read more about Lakwena. And because this is a short time, but I wanted to highlight some of the things this lady did, despite the fact, even if she didn't, probably she wasn't even educated. I don't know so much about her in that angle, but she was able to stand up. But here we have so much more we can do. We can't do anything. So this lady, the thing that I want to highlight about her is that we should learn something from her. Next slide. And I'm going to hand it over to Teacher Katie.
Thank you again, Teacher Mimi. Again, I'm going to touch briefly on standing up when something wrong is happening. Again, I'd like to quote again that the only thing to let bad men win is if for good men stay silent. But this is a much bigger ask than people give it credit for. When you see something bad happening and you choose not to do something, then you are ensuring your own safety. If you choose to do something, you're putting yourself in the middle of a situation that might cause you harm. Do not degrade people because they don't want harm done to them. The person who's doing the kicking is the evil one. It is not the person who is walking by. However, the person who is walking by, if they can put themselves in a position of hurt or possible pain, that is an indicator of how far and how bad things have gotten. To ask a normal person, a mother, a father, even a kid, to have to step in to stop evil happening right in front of us is an absurd thing to ask. So do not make people feel bad for not standing up and putting themselves in harm's way. Instead, let us inspire each other to make it impossible for a person to do harm in the streets. Let us stand up together and inspire each other to make it such an absurd thing that somebody would get kicked in the streets, that other people don't have to be put in the position to stand between the evil and a human. This is what the goal is. But until that time, we are choosing, as part of this coalition, to be that person who stands between evil and the public. So even though I don't think we should diminish anybody who doesn't want to put themselves in harm, we are choosing that. And because we are choosing that, it is our responsibility to step in. We have already chosen to take the harm. So let's do it. Now, that being said, always take care of yourself, know how valuable you are, and make sure that you are safe as much as possible. Oh, it is a difficult road to hoe. It is a hard line to walk, isn't it? But we'll get there together as we keep growing. All right. The next woman that I made a little slide for was Kyujin. She is Japanese, and her character is unimpeachable. I recommend all going and studying about her. The reason I picked strength of character is because recently I've taught lessons about developing character, and this just fit right in. So hopefully you'll all come and join ALA, and you can hear all about it when we do it this next cohort. All right, so Kui Jin in 1904 was a wealthy Chinese wife. Oh, she was Chinese, not Japanese. I do apologize. Big mistake on my part. But she was a mother, a poet, and a feminist. Tired of the severe patriarchal restraints placed on her in intellectual and political development, she shocked Beijing society, leaving her family behind. She sailed to Japan to enroll in college and meet with the like-minded Chinese revolutionaries who sought to overthrow their corrupt government. Now, who does that sound like? Is this not exactly what we are doing today? She described the journey in her poem. This is a lovely poem. It loses a little bit because of translation. If you do know how to read Mandarin, look it up. It said, regrets, lines written en route to Japan. Unbinding my feet, I clean out 1,000 years of prison. With heated heart, arouse all women's spirits. Alas, the delicate kerchief here is half stained with blood and half with tears. For those who are unaware of what a bound foot is, in this time, it was the height of beauty and an expectation for women to have unrealistically small feet. And if they didn't, they would fold the foot like this. So the toes would be at the heel. And then they would bind them. They would start this as infants, so their feet would grow like this. So they would be small and be more attractive to male suitors. So when she says, unbinding her feet, where was that? Unbinding my feet, I clean out 1,000 years of prison. She's talking about those who came before her who were so bound that they were in prison for so long. This is an extremely good example of what it means to be a revolutionary woman. She had everything that a woman at that time would want. She had a wealthy family, she had children, she had everything that the patriarchy said she wanted, and she wanted more. So she took it. This is what it means to be a revolutionary woman. This woman defied everybody and chose her own path. And when she chose it well. Later, you find out she was an incredible swordsman. That's why she's holding a sword there. It's a little one, but you know, they didn't for the picture. And she became an incredibly valiant fighter for social change. I do recommend you go look her up. And I hope that as we continue through these slides, you think about what you want your story to be. And don't allow somebody else to tell you what it should be, or what you should want, or what should be enough. Because there is no such thing as enough. There is only what you decide you want for you. And it is only by our arms and our strength that we can get there. So you'd be amazed how strong a woman's arm can be. All right, Dorcas, thank you for a moment. Please continue.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Teacher Katie. Wow.
My apologies, Dorcas. I meant Teacher Mimi. I'm so sorry.
Teacher
I'm
Mimi,
so used to turning it back over to you.
it's okay. Teacher Mimi, please do come in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Teacher Katie. And by the way, that lady was executed at the age of 32. By the way, she came from a wealthy family. And so being wealthy, she was comfortable, but she did not feel comfortable where she was when she was seeing those other women and, the women in her society being, treated the way they were, but she was executed at the age of 32. So next slide, we are going to talk about Eleanor Roosevelt. Next slide. And we're going to try to go through this as soon, keep on going. She already did that one. The next one. So Eleanor Roosevelt, she was the first lady of, she was born, and there's a typo somewhere, it says 1990, 84, but she was actually born October 11th, 1884. Okay, she lived a life of, she was the first lady of the United States of America, but she was born in 1884. She lived a life of privilege, but faced with difficult childhood. She was orphaned at the age of 10, but she emerged as a champion for the underprivileged. At the age of 14, she was sent to England, and there she gained, she was sent to a school in England, where she gained exposure to the world and learned about leadership. And I wanted to stress that exposing yourself, many times we do not expose ourselves. How do you expose yourself? We are talking about these ladies. Go out there and read about them, because this little time we have here to talk about them, we might not cover everything, but there will be something that is going to inspire you. We cannot be closed-minded, because, sometimes we feel like we know everything, but there's certain things we do not know. Like they say, learning does not stop. But the way you expose yourself to things in this world is how you're going to be able to stand up for the things that mean important and bring a change where you are. You cannot just say that is for those people, that is for the land people. Expose yourself. The internet is a free resource where you can go just type in Eleanor Roosevelt and read about her. But anyway, this lady, she got married to Franklin Roosevelt, who was the first president of the United States. They had 6 children. How many children do you have? She was married. So there's no excuse for saying that I'm married, I have kids, but she did something. And she came from a wealthy family, although she was orphaned at 10. She came from, but she thought it important, because I'm telling you, however much you have your kids, protect them in the perfect picket fenced, whatever mansions, these kids are going to go into a generation where people that you've deprived, for example, in Uganda, where people are deprived of an education. How has this country deprived, how has this junta deprived an education for people? If you make education expensive, if you make it free, but then you do not provide the resources needed, then these people are not going to be exposed. That's why you see our people in Uganda, and I'm giving specifically in Uganda, They don't understand. Tomorrow they see the bus coming, they get on the bus, they get a t-shirt, they get $4,000, 4,000 shillings, and then they say that is good. You go vote for somebody. You vote for somebody who is going to take a chisanja of 5 years, getting billions, getting stuff. You get a t-shirt, sugar to 1 kilo of sugar that is even not going to last you a month. You get on that bus. Tomorrow you're speaking about, and then tomorrow you're speaking about something else. So what am I telling you? You gotta expose our people. We have to expose our people. Even us ourselves have to be exposed. We are in these countries that are technologically and have a lot of information, but we adamantly refuse to expose ourselves, to read about these things. You cannot go in UN and start talking, cut off funding, cut off this, when you have not trained yourself to know how to answer, to ask or tell them what you need to tell them. You have to learn how to do the diplomacy, whatever things. Learn about it. Don't just leave it for people only. I'm leaving. Those people who are learned are the ones to do that. Expose yourself. That is what I learned from this lady. The other things she engaged, she used her role as a first lady. She did not just stay there to just take photographs and to change outfits. No, she used that platform actively to engage with public affairs, advocating for social justice and providing human rights. She was an ardent advocate for human rights, and she was part of those people who crafted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights which was adopted in 1948. Guys, this generation, we are now talking of human rights. Human rights was started in 1948. In another generation, what are we going to do about this generation? What invention are we going to do about us standing for our fellow human beings, in this generation? We are working off things that were started back in another generation. But what is going to be said of our generation that is an invention in our own generation, this generation? So that's what comes out in mind when we speak of that, of this lady. She also started, she became, she also had a column. She also made press conferences, and she also wrote a column. So every weekly she had a talk show and talking about the different issues. But she did so much more, and all of that you can go more and read. And some of this is in this slide. You can go read it. So the next slide. So Mabel Danke, she was from Ghana. By the way, she also came from a wealthy family. Her father was a lawyer and her mother was a businesswoman. She was also sent out to England, where she was her father did not want her to study a secretarial course, but she opted for that, but it was against the wish of her father. But in the 1930s, she wrote for newspapers, and she used different aliases in order to advertise whatever she had to say. But she was writing columns. Remember, that is in the 1930s. 1930s, she was writing. But she, what helped her secretarial course helped her in writing these news columns and whatever. But she was fostering awareness, and she also advocated for, in many of her articles, she was advocating for self-governance. And then in the 1950s, prior to the Ghana independence, she also made history. She became the first elected woman in the African Legislative Assembly. So what do we know about this is that she wrote. Now you think that you guys are writing, You go on Facebook, you go on these things, you write, but what we are writing, we are not even writing about the issues we have in our countries, you know? We are writing about things, we are either abusing some people, or doing something or whatever. Let us get involved. That's how we are going to bring change. These women back then, imagine this lady, she was born in the 1900s, and they were doing something. And that is something that should encourage us to continue in this generation. Next slide. And I'll hand it over to Teacher Kerry.
Thank you again, Mimi. I really appreciate you touching on Eleanor Roosevelt, especially. She's a personal hero of mine because she just never stopped. She fought for human rights from day one, and she fought for human rights till the day she died. Her position made it possible for her to do a lot more than other people were able to. And she fought harder than most for African American lives in our country during a time when it was really a beautiful thing. Please look her up again. All right, next woman of power. This woman is just power personified. Her name was Neri Diaz. She's from Mexico. And she was literally named the Rebel Queen of Morales, which just is all kinds of cool. And I don't know why there's not a movie about her yet. There really should be. So she was the daughter of a Mayan Native American and a former Mexican general who had rebelled against the strongman government of President Diaz over a decade before. So her father had won the war over a despot president. Years after her father's death, she took up his fight, in the process becoming a legendary figure during her own short lifetime. Brutal and fiery, the red-headed Nari was known for her passionate dancing and her threat to personally decapitate Diaz. Her troops were infamous for their violence, looting, burning, and pillaging whole entire towns. So fear was la nire. It was said that Governor Guerrero hid in a crate and fled her forces in a panic. Neri was reportedly eventually executed, but there's no real evidence of that. Now, she's problematic to be sure. Burning down entire cities is not really something we're shooting for here. But if we are talking about a woman with sheer, unadulterated power, this woman had it. My favorite bit about her is that she was known for her passionate dancing. This is something that people don't seem to realize. A person who is truly passionate about anything is probably our best source for a passionate revolutionary. Being a dancer myself, this just rings beautifully for me. It makes me feel like this is where I'm supposed to be, because those things go hand in hand. While I do not condone her efforts to decapitate people and have that be her name, I do appreciate the amount of power that is behind her. And I do appreciate that it proves you do not have to be a man to be unimaginably powerful. Women are just as capable of burning down a village. Again, not condoning it, but I do wish to bring it to everyone's attention, because women often are put in a position of lesser strength, more servitude, background roles. But it's women like this one that prove not only are women capable of leading and being that strength and power, but they are capable of doing it to such a degree that the governor will hide in a crate rather than find out if that woman is as powerful as she is. So please take from this your own power, know who you are, and know that your power can be just as palpable as anybody else's. But please rein it in to at least the point where you're not decapitating people. My apologies. This one just makes me really, it gives me a lot of hope in a very weird way. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Teacher Mimi, and I look forward to hearing her next bit.
Thank you so much, Teacher Katie, for that. And so the next set of women were passionate for justice, empowerment, and positive change. We have Eleanor Franchos. She was from Trinidad Tobago. And then Fumilayo Ransom Party, she was from Nigeria. And Wangari Maathai, she was from Kenya. These women, known from their revolutionary spirit, left a lasting impact on history, inspiring generations worldwide with their passion for justice, empowerment, and positive change. Next slide. So we shall talk about these three ladies, but in as fast as we can. Elema Franchos, she was Trinidad Tobago. She was an Afrocentric socialist activist who was proclaimed a national heroine of Trinidad and Tobago, renowned for her advocacy for trade unions, her stance against war, and her opposition to colonialism. She was born in 1897. She worked worked alongside her mother as a cotton picker and advocated for community advancement. Now I want to talk about, that was in 1887. That was in early or late, in the late 18, well, she was born in 1897, but then she worked alongside, of course, alongside her mother as a cotton picker, but that was in the early 1900s, you know. But what happened to her is that she read extensively because she realized that it was important to get an education. At that time, they were not really allowed to, as kind of, it was the slave time. They were not allowed to go to school or anything, but she realized that it was important for her to get an education. And that was not allowed to her, but she had to read extensively to educate herself, to be able to give public speeches on labor and political matters. She took it upon herself. This is what she said. She said, this is what she said. She said that, I know that my speeches create a fire in the minds of people so as to change their condition, which now exists. But one thing that stood out for me is her taking it on herself to educate herself, even if at that time she wasn't given that opportunity to go to school because she had to start working early alongside her mother. So, but what she did, she fought against the British colony policies in Trinidad and Tobago, leading strikes, establishing the national unemployment movement. Imagine at that time. So we are thinking at this time that we can't do all these things. She established the national unemployment movement and even founded the Negro Welfare, Culture, and Social Association. Then she was the first woman in Trinidad and Tobago's history to be tried for sedition. She was captured by the police. And defended, but ultimately found not guilty. So in 1917, she had a son who was called Conrad. And that Conrad, I think, enlisted in the World War I. But she was so opposed against it because she thought that it was supporting the British Crown due to the racial discrimination. And then she also believed that Hitler's ascent would counterbalance Saltin's. I think she had more of socialist ideas. And so that was her. But one thing I wanted to highlight about her is that she was able to educate herself so that she would be able to stand in front of these people. So what do we learn about her from that? Is that need to be able to expose yourself. That's what I'm saying. Expose your mind, to be able to fight what we are fighting, the junta. In order to fight, you have to expose, because you can't fight an enemy you don't know how. You can't just go blind without preparing yourself. Even with the new Uganda we are hoping, you have to prepare yourself. Do not put Mr. Kyagulanyi in a complicated situation because you feel that you have to be given a position in a new government. When you have not enlightened yourself, you've not prepared. This is the time now you have to be going in school. If you want to be a finance manager, go and study accounting, finance, so that he does not have a hard time to say, other than you just, if you're a security person, go and study about that security thing. Don't just stop on just, I'm the one who's the security person looking after this person. Let us educate ourselves. It's very important, even as people are, even as we are going through this period. You have to prepare yourself, because you cannot go and start, you cannot just go and start fighting an enemy without knowing what to do, without knowing even that person. That's why we've had this civic education, so that you understand what is an oppressor, what is a tyrant, what is a dictator, how can I use social commentary to be of use? How can I use my talent? It's not about just entertainment. It's not you being a blogger and just being getting a following, but you sit on a blogger's whatever, the bloggers thing for 4 years. You're listening to this blogger, but no action. The blogger is doing his job. He's getting the information, giving it to you. What are you doing with that information? 4 years you're sitting in front. I'm going to listen to Lumbuye. I'm going to listen to Chimbugwe. What that information he has given you, what is it? What use is it? You've been attending these spaces, but you're doing no action. What is there for you if you're getting this information, but you're not putting any action to it? You're not helping people to understand why I have to pay taxes, why there is no medicine in hospitals. You have to take your civic responsibility, pay the taxes, as well as you have to also stand up when they are misusing the funds, but not keep quiet and just look on. They are hitting somebody, somebody's kicking somebody, and you're just looking on like this while that person is running away. Educating yourself, very important. The next person, and I'm gonna go through the Fumilayo, who was from Nigeria. Same thing. This one, she was a teacher, and her role was to help the low-income people to be educated. Are you helping the people in the villages be educated? Or you're just sitting with your knowledge, you get it from these spaces, and you sit with it, but you sit with it. Go out there. If you're telling people to go out, what are you doing in yourself? We also in the diaspora need to be educated, because there are many things we don't know, but you're sitting with that knowledge. Do something about it. So the other one who's from Kenya, she was fighting about environment. Hers was, she formed a non-environmental organization that promoted women rights, environmental preservation, and tree planting. She encouraged tree planting. They are destroying forests in Uganda, but the day floods start coming, because those trees have roots that help the ecosystem, or even they are destroying lakes. But the day those rivers will start reclaiming their land. Go and look at these videos. Maybe we do not understand and we don't visualize it. You going and building in swamps. Be that voice that stands out and talk about the environmental degradation. Don't wait for people who are hoping to gain from it. because they won't say anything. You have to say something about it. So these women, this woman, lady, Miss Wangari stood up for the environmental. You throw trash in those things, in these nyalas, in the city, in these channels, and then tomorrow you're flooded and you complain. We have to be that advocate who goes around. Do not throw trash in this because it's gonna flood. I looked at Kenya and the water was up until the roof because of destroying and thinking you're building every little patch of land you're building places. These are places are there for a reason because they consume some of this water. But you destroy that, then that water is gonna come to where you've built your houses and it's going to kill all of you. And unfortunately, like in Uganda, we don't even have disaster preparedness. Imagine if the water was to flood up to the rooftop, and we do not even fire cannot come. When there's a fire, they cannot come in and put it out so fast. Imagine when there are floods up to the rooftop. How many people are going to die? Are we going to wait for that? You be the voice to do something about it. Next slide. So these next women were controversial, but they stood up. We always criticize some of these women, and yes, I'm one of them who could. I'm one of them who criticizes, but they have a message in their controversial way of projecting their messages. So we had Isla Adele Fatal from Egypt. We have Julia Sebutinde from Uganda. And then we have Stella Nyanzi. She's a little bit popular and well known for her, you guys will hear it. So these women were dedicated to challenging norms. We are norms of decency. Norms of you want to be heard, you want to be in line with all these other people. But they defied that. These women dedicated to challenging norms, advocating for justice and leaving lasting impact, often facing controversies due to their bold stances and unyielding pursuit for change. Next slide. So Isla Adele Fattah, she's from Egypt. She was also known as she's an Egyptian activist and journalist. She played a pivotal role in 2011 revolution, actually, that led to the Arab Spring thing that went around those Arab, these Arab countries. So she was one of those that led to the fall of the autocratic Hossein Mubarak's regime in Egypt. So she founded on April 6th, the youth movement, which became a driving force behind the 2011 street protest. She was known as the Facebook girl. She used Facebook. You see how we can use Facebook? We can use social media, but we cannot use we have to use social media in a way that drives the purpose of what we want to do. So, but she used social media to organize anti-government demonstration, urging young people to join in support of workers' rights. Despite her initial prominence, she faced backlash after Mubarak's fall. Some now view her as a traitor and a foreign agent. So Egyptians' political climate shifted with that revolution in their country, and the Muslim Brotherhood briefly came to power before being overthrown by Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. But what I want to bring out on her is that her use going to Facebook and organizing those anti-demonstrations, urging young people. She started having, and before it, she was, but sometimes we go on this Facebook and we share the wrong, so-and-so is fighting so-and-so. That and that is right. Why can you get something meaningful? and start that and be the voice of that and pass it to, and it grows big. This and going on, despite her initial, prominence, of course, she has been, she's treated as a traitor, this Isla. She's treated in her because, of course, being a Muslim and, starting all this revolution, she's controversial to the usual norms of their society. Women are supposed to be quiet, calm, and and you shouldn't be saying anything, So she's controversial, but she got that message that got something moving. Next slide. Next slide. Julia Septinde. So this one also became a very prominent because of her decision that she was born. Her decision she made in the in the ICC. She was born in 1954. She was the first African lady member of the International Court of Justice. Currently served as chancellor at Mutesa One Royal. Septinde objected to South Africa's emergency measures regarding the Gaza conflict, the Israel thing that is going on, claiming that Israel did not intend to commit genocide. Her discounting opinion was in line with the court jurisdiction and historical background, but it contradicted the majority perspective, So the thing I wanted to highlight out, yes, many of us may not agree with her, but she stood out against the majority. Yeah? When can you stand up against the majority? When can you stand up and say, no, something is not right here? You go against the majority. Sometimes there are certain things, the people that we always feel that we need to support. These are people who are old. They have gone their lifetime. You are a starting lawyer, you are a starting businesswoman, you have a whole life to live. But you're supporting somebody that is very wrong. These people who are old and these juntas of Uganda, this junta president of ours, he's lived his life. And that is the legacy he wants to leave behind. When he started out in 1986, I myself, I would say I was one of those people who loved this guy. I would go research, do everything about him because I was seeing him as a liberator. He was a liberator. He was somebody everybody Ugandan wanted. But when somebody starts doing wrong, stand up. Don't stand with people who say, oh, because I'm getting a meal, I'm getting a paycheck. What is a paycheck? What legacy are you leaving behind? What legacy are you going to be remembered in history? In the next generation, what history are they going to write about your generation? So that is very important. And this lady, Julia Septinde, stood out, said, no, yes, I understand whatever you're talking about. This is what it is. Sometimes it's going to take you to stand up as an individual when there's wrong being done. Stella Nyanzi. Next slide. I will start with her book, No Roses from Her Mouth. There is no roses in Stella Nyanzi's mouth. There are no roses.
Omulimu gw'Abannayuganda oba gwa Munnayuganda gw'omukyala wenna gy'oli kwa buli muntu okugoba nakyemalira okuggyawo dictator General Kaguta Museveni tubeere n'ensi ennungi gye tweyagaliramu era ffenna gye tuneenyumirizaamu gwe nange n'abaana baffe abaliddawo buvunaanyizibwa bwange okukola buli ekisaaniddewo kyonna wansi w'enjuba okulaba nga kino kituukirira era nga kibaawo. Mbaagala nnyo mwenna abaliko mwebale kubaako mukimanyi nti buvunaanyizibwa bunange okulaba nga tutereeza ensi yaffe era nga twenyigiramu buli nsonga eneesitula Uganda eno kugiteeka waggulu. Mukama bakuumire mweraba.